Hello, Planeswalkers. Tyler here, and I realized that I was on the last episode, or the next episode, I can't remember. I just recorded one of these with Andrew, and we were talking about how it'd been a while since we did a Taps for Two where it was just me and him. And so here's a Taps for Two where Andrew is nowhere to be seen. Uh, Joining me today is someone you might be familiar with. She's joined in. It's been a while, but you were on a couple of my Monday videos. It is my wonderful girlfriend Lee,
Hello. I
and
was also the voices for
oh yeah,
Shieldred and Elesh Norn.
yeah, she was also on our series of Praetor, uh, Praetor deck techs that were all voice acted. Yeah, she supplied Elish Norn's and Shieldred's voices.
I got to
Uh,
say though, I really enjoy doing Elesh Norn better. It's a lot more fun.
that's just because it's Jester. Uh,
Shush.
and that's actually a really cool. For anyone who knows Jester, Jester is a member of Critical Role. It's safe to say they are the premier D&D show,
One of the big ones.
and that funnels really nicely because with Zendikar Rising coming out and us returning to the original D&D plane, um, I thought it would be cool to kind of, and also because both Dungeons and Dragons and Magic the Gathering are both owned by Wizards, I thought it would be cool to sit down with Lee, who is in the same vein that I'm a giant magic nut. Lee loves Dungeons and Dragons. Uh, and so I thought it would be cool to kind of look at Zendikar both through the lens of Magic the Gathering, where it started, and how some of that got set up, or how some of that translated to D&D, because I believe Zendikar is one of the three planes that have been brought into D&D. There's Zendikar, there's Theros, and there's
Ravnica and
Ravnica.
Theros, yeah.
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 But Zendikar is the
hmm
original, because Zendikar was originally meant to be the Dungeons and Dragons plane. Um, and we're going back. And what's really cool is uh, Zendikar's kind of been defined by after they introduced it as like, hey, this is going to be like if you want to play Dungeons and Dragons and Magic, here you go. But then also here's your cosmic horror, because the Eldrazi kind of took over like what everyone knows about Zendikar, and so with Zendikar Rising, they're like, okay, the Eldrazi have been defeated, they're gone, we're going back to the roots. To the point where one of the new mechanics that they've introduced for Zendikar Rising is the party mechanic, where a full party is if you have a rogue, a cleric, a wizard, and a warrior, and you get different bonuses depending on like how full your party is or and stuff like that. And it's I know there's a lot of people that when they announced that those were going to be the creature types for party, a lot of people were like, "Well, where's the bard?" And unfortunately, Bard isn't actually a creature type in Magic. There's one guy that I can think of who's a legendary creature, Yisan, the Wanderer Bard, and he's classified as a rogue.
There's a lot more than just a bard that's missing. Uh,
I think working with what they have though, most people that don't play Dungeons and Dragons, I but like know of it. I think like looking at okay, cleric, wizard, warrior, and rogue. Yeah, that makes sense for something super basic.
that's a pretty good party balance. Yes, you've got martial, magical, healing, and
Sneaky, sneaky.
sneak bastard. Yes.
Um, so I have open with I've opened up the same thing that I had sent to you, the Planeshift Zendikar
Yeah,
PDF,
I have mine open too.
and I mean I feel like the most interesting bits of this are going to be the creatures, because I feel like people do homebrew worlds all the time, and it's just like, yeah, Zendikar has a bunch of floating islands and the hedrons and stuff like that. But I think the things most people are going to be interested in is how the races are brought over, because Zendikar's kind of got a handful of the train is going by. Zendikar's
Hmm.
got like its handful of sentient races. Um, they've got vampires who I think are handled a little bit differently than regular vampires. Obviously, they've got humans, they've got goblins, they've got the core, spelled Kor. I don't
Yeah.
know if those pre-existed in D&D or if,
No, they do not. Not to my knowledge, anyway.
and they're kind of like they're like elf adjacent,
Yeah, I guess.
but because yeah, core are tall, slender humanoids with light hair and gray, blue-gray, or ivory skin. They have slightly pointed ears, and males have short, fleshy barbels on their chins.
I don't like that description, I'm not gonna lie. Uh, I'd say the closest equivalent, just pure description wise, would be the drow elves.
Yeah, yeah, I can see
Um,
that.
but even so, that's not quite even a 1-for-1 ratio, not even with the stats, I think. Um, they're an interesting race though. There's not a lot of there's no flat out description of a language spoken purely with words in D&D, and the fact that the core have this just part of their abilities is really interesting. And
Oh yeah,
just reading through their stats again,
the core have a
they're a
nonverbal language.
weird little mishmash of, I'd say, elves and halflings actually.
Halflings. That's one I wasn't expecting.
Yes. Well, because the core have the lucky and brave racial features, which is a huge part of being a halfling. Halflings have the lucky feature enabling you to re-roll ones on a d20, and the brave feature allowing you to basically not be scared of anything ever. And that
And
is exclusively halflings.
and for anyone that is more familiar with the core in Magic, that makes sense because a lot of them live in sky ruins, and so are usually getting around by throwing hooks that are on ropes and swinging from island to island, or they're building like paragliders. And so like the way that they're getting around, like they're like I see core climbing, proficiency in athletics and acrobatics, because that's their
Hmm.
whole thing is they get around in the sky, but they do not have wings. And so that's their whole thing is they have to be brave given because a lot of them are nomadic, and so they're constantly wandering around. And yeah,
Hmm.
just their method of transport, because I'm gonna pull some up on Scryfall real quick. Scryfall core. Nope, not Corvold. I want the core specifically. There's 69 cards that include core. Nice. Um, let me. Uh, Cliffside Lookout. It's it's a core woman, and she's attached herself to the side of a rock, and she's just kind of hanging there. Cliffside Rescuer. It's a mountain climber. He's hanging from a floating island and is swinging in to help someone. Um, oh, Ghostly Sentinel. It's a core spirit. Sometimes they don't make it. Oh, here we go. Kitesail Scout, Kitesail Cleric, Kitesail Apprentice. The kite sails are. This dude literally has made wings that he has strapped to himself.
Makes sense.
And so yeah, it's kind of cool seeing that because like I said, halfling is not something that I would have expected them to bring in, but with the way that the core have to live, and with what you were saying, like it's cool that that is where they decided to borrow from, despite the fact that core are like they're the same size as humans, they live as long as humans. They're basically they are reskinned humans, and yeah, we've got the merfolk because D&D had merfolk to begin with, right?
They have lots of different aquatic races. I don't think any of them are flat out called merfolk. But there's tritons and I'm blanking on a lot of them. There's a lot of aquatic races. Uh, that I cannot find, of course, right now. Oh, the Loca. Oh, I can never remember how to pronounce that. Locatha and the Grungs and the Tritons and there's so very many aquatic races. Um, but I gotta say, I love this concept that Zendikar is bringing in, where you have different traits based on your tribe,
Oh, are you
because
talking
that's
about Amiria, Ula, and Cozy?
yeah, that's not really a thing in standard D&D rules. Keeping in mind that every table has their own rules, but usually it's related to what subrace you are of a race of people. Like with elves, there's the moon elves, the sun elves. If you follow the Critical Role cast, there's the sea elves and the oh, of course I'm forgetting the other one that I'm thinking of, but essentially a group of elves that specifically worship the Moonweaver, and they're all defined by what subrace they are. But this is entirely based on who you choose to partner yourself with when you've become an adult. And
I do
that's
like
just new and
I
interesting.
do like their wording of it of a merfolk isn't born into a creed but chooses it upon reaching adulthood, and it is rare for a merfolk not to choose a creed. Merfolk of the wind and water creeds aren't hostile to each other, but members of each creed regard the other creed with vague disdain. Members of both
That
of
sounds. Uh,
mem-
th- Go ahead,
I
sorry.
was gonna say members of both of those creeds regard the cozy creed with suspicion and some degree of fear.
That's also just kind of D&D politics in general, though. If anyone has read the other source books, elves treat other subraces of elves as lesser than the others. High elves and sun elves, they disagree with each other's tactics. Wood elves and moon elves, even like hill and mountain dwarves, I believe, are just weird and separate and like that. It's surprisingly common. I think it just is more meant to bring an interesting role playing tactic to the table if you were to interact with this other portion of your society that is viewed in this way.
Especially given the cozy creed. No merfolk will openly admit to following the creed of the trickster, but those who do view cozy as an ally who can grant them control over the chaotic forces of the world. So, worth noting, and this probably has to do with why they get different abilities. Amiria, Ula, and Cozy are the three merfolk gods.
Mm,
They are uh, the ideas of them, though, like those gods don't exist. They are half remembered memories of Emrakul, Ulamog, and Kozilek, the Eldrazi Titans, because the Titans have been sealed on Zendikar for thousands of years.
mm,
And so over time, this religion kind of grew around each one. So Amiria is Emrakul, Ula is Ulamog, and Kozi is Kozilek. And so the fact that they're worshiping these eldritch monstrosities could have like something to do with that. Because in Magic, there's kind of like a divide between them. Like there are like when you like there will be creature card like they're all creature type merfolk, but like Cozy Trickster is one who I think taps something when it comes into play. So like depending on like it'll mention like if they worship Amiria or Ula or Cozy, but not like all the time. But
Mm.
when it does, they tend to have like kind of different abilities. Which it's cool that kind. Here, let me see if I can pull those up as well. Uh, Scryfall, Merfolk, Zendikar, because there's a lot of
That's
Merfolk.
starting to become a little bit of a thing in D&D, but it's still they want you to make the character that you want to make. They don't want you to feel like you're forced into these roles. I'd say the closest to something like this would be the cleric class. There's the various different
This was a bad way to do this.
oh, why am I blanking on just all the terms right now? There's different subclasses of cleric that get you different abilities, like the difference between, for example, with Critical Role, Jester has the Trickster subclass, enabling her to do more stealthy things, and her Dimension Door ability and Modify Memory abilities all very much heavily rooted in causing trickery, while Pike Trickfoot is a War Domain cleric, and her abilities is more focused on being able to hit things good and hard. But it's not really a thing that's innate with races, except for maybe Asimar. But even then, that's more based on the life you lived prior to the adventure.
So I was deeply wrong about what Cozy's Trickster did, but it still does also make sense. So Cozy's Trickster is a 1/1 Merfolk Wizard for a single blue. Whenever an opponent shuffles his or her library, you may put a +1/+1 counter on Cozy's Trickster. And so it's this idea of this, like, I don't think there's any other merfolk that cares about somebody shuffling their library. But this one specifically, who worships Cozy and is referred to as a trickster themselves, is like watching this inane task and getting power from it, and no one is sure why.
Hmm.
Um, After them, we've got the vampires, which obviously, like, who doesn't know vampires? Um,
They're pretty
Zendikar
popular.
Zendikar handles them a little differently in that the vampires on Zendikar are not undead. Um, but they have been cursed. I think again because of the Eldrazi. So
Yeah.
their their flesh is cold, and their skin is gray or purple and feels like death, and they can drain magical energy from the blood of other living creatures. So they don't necessarily eat you in the same way that classic vampires do, or even the vampires of Innistrad, who are more akin to your classic vampires. But they will drain your essence from you and then use that for their own goods. But I don't think most of the vampires of Zendikar are necessarily evil. They come in different houses. Um, and there's does it not actually mention the different houses here? It doesn't.
It does mention them,
Oh, it does.
doesn't it?
Where?
I thought it did. I thought I read
Um,
something about them. Oh, maybe it just said that there's chiefs. Never mind.
yeah, there's the Blood Chiefs.
Yes.
And the only two that are really known or that we know about are Drana, who is the leader and currently the last remaining Blood Chief. She is the leader of like the highest of the vampire houses, and then there is, oh god, I'm staring at his picture. It's him, Kalidas of the Get. He's the guy who we're staring at his back, and he's staring over his shoulder. Kalidas is or was the blood chief of the lowest house, who ended up giving his entire tribe to Ulamog. And so this artwork is taken from his card, Kalidas, Blood Chief of Get, and there's another card where he is turned around and we're facing him head on, but he's got a Dominator drone on his head and he's Kalida's traitor of Get because he gave his entire tribe to the Eldrazi.
Jesus.
Um,
Uh,
Goblins are goblins. Like, the Zendikar goblins have stone skin, but goblins are goblins. Those aren't fun. Elves are elves. I wanted to get to the Zendikar bestiary
it's pretty
because
cool.
are archons, just because they're like the first thing that has popped up, are those a thing in D&D, or
They are not really.
those
The
of a
closest
deva?
the closest would be any number of different celestial guardians that are included as the greater pantheon is always at work somehow or another. It's just a matter of how involved they are, and usually people don't want to have the gods actively like laying down the law themselves, so they have various celestial beings. But nothing like this half man, half griffin cannot be separated
Oh yeah.
creature.
Yeah, no, I actually never realized that about Magic's Archons. I'm literally reading it for the first time now, where the appearance of the Archon is deceptive. They look like hooded humans riding winged lions, but they are a single creature with just one mind and will, because they're like avatars of white mana.
Yeah. I just did a quick search of monsters in the monster manual, and there are only two archons officially listed, at least for the source books that I have, and they are both in magic source books.
Yeah,
They are not really a thing in D&D. Um,
yeah,
Devas are just standard celestials. They work pretty well for the concept that they're looking for.
got it. Griffins are boring. Griffins are griffins. Felidars, we were actually talking about before we started recording, because I was confused as to why they were listed as celestial when they're giant cats, and then we came, you were like, well, it's because of the horns, and then I was like, oh, it's also because they're using the stat block of
A
unicorns,
unicorn.
which would make sense.
Unicorns are celestial.
Because man, the Felidars are scary. They've
They are pretty cool. Yeah.
they've got their own alternate win con in Felidar Sovereign, who, if at the start of your turn, if you have 40 or more life, you win the game.
Mm.
And what's really funny is because obviously at the time when he came out, the train is back. Uh, he was geared towards like standard and modern and game formats where your life total is 20, so you have to like gain life to get up to 40, and then commander where you start at 40, so if you can keep that life total and get the sovereign out, and then just survive and go around the table, like you win. So it's
Yeah.
but yeah, no, the Felidars are, they're huge, and they've got like, the more that I think about like what like the lore of the Felidars has, the more I like agree with this idea of them being celestial, because I don't think they're sentient, but they're pretty damn close.
I think they are sentient because non-sentient creatures in D&D don't really speak languages, and Felidars for D&D not only speak a language but speak celestial and are telepathic.
Why do they get legendary actions?
That's uh that's a great thing. For those of you who play Magic and don't know what a legendary action is, essentially at the end of someone else's turn, they can go, "You know what? I want to do something real quick," and they're allowed to. Uh I don't know, but I love it, to be honest. There's not a lot of creatures out there that could theoretically be used or even played by a player character that has legendary actions, unless it's a weird out there class feature. And I usually that's a reaction. It's not a legendary action. So it's cool. I love it. Uh I I love all these things that the Felidar can do because
Multi
I
multi attack.
healing touch 3 times a day. It has multi attack, which is pretty cool. It can teleport. Why not? I'll take that. It can take itself and 3 willing creatures within 5 feet. It doesn't even have to be touching them. It just has to see them. Like that alone is just
It has
crazy.
to see them and they have to consent. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
Felidars. Because I think as far as magic is concerned, like, Felidar Sovereign is kind of the big one, but past that, they're just kind of portrayed as cat beasts. Like, it's hinted that they have a degree of sentience. There was one that was just printed in Zendikar Rising that uh, mentions that they'll leave chunks of their kills outside of the tents of adventurers that they deem as worthy. And
Mm.
even their description here, Felidars consent to be ridden only by knights they consider virtuous. So yeah, I guess if you have an idea of what virtuous even means, I guess you're right. They would have a degree of sentience. I'm not seeing where they have language.
It's part of the stat block. Uh,
Oh, I see now. Languages, celestial, and telepathy, 60 feet. Okay.
mhm. Um, I imagine part of the only the most virtuous can write it is they can just cast detect evil and good at will. That's a first level spell. That's a spell that requires spell slots. And he can also dispel evil and good, which is also crazy.
Yeah, no, that kind of makes that part I do get. There are a couple Felidars that hate on like enchantments. There's Felidar Cub who can kill itself to blow up an enchantment, which I just think is delightful.
That got so dark.
Like it's literally Felidar Cub, sacrifice it, destroy target enchantment, and it's a Felidar that looks like it's leaping off a cliff.
Oh my god.
Sphinxes and drakes or whatever. Um, Krakens are a thing that Zendikar has. I didn't realize that the Kraken pictured Rexiel, the Risen Deep. Didn't realize he was from Zendikar, but here we are. Uh, Zendikar's seas are filled with giant monsters. There's a planeswalker that is native to Zendikar, Kiora, who is a merfolk. And she ended up, like, her method of trying to fight the Eldrazi was to rally the beasts of Zendikar's oceans, as well as the oceans of other planes. She ended up going to Theros, stealing the god Thassa's Bident, and trying to steal Krakens and Leviathans from Theros to bring back to Zendikar. She summoned a giant octopus to fight Kozilek.
I mean, you gotta do what you gotta do.
The octopus was promptly torn in half. Um, Lurking in the deepest reaches of Zendikar. So Krakens are a thing in D&D.
Yes. Yes.
Fantastic. What route do they go? Cause uh, like with magic, like depending on what plane you're on, like we've got Rexiel here who has like the humanoid shape, kind of looks like the one from Clash of the Titans.
Mm-hmm. Like
Um,
the original Clash of the Titans.
yeah, but then like on Theros, they look like more like a cross between squids, lobsters, and crabs. There's some that are just like giant octopuses. What route do the D&D Krakens go?
I'm so glad you asked. I have a photo.
Oh, goody. Oh,
So essentially, what it looks like is a strange mix of a medieval form of a kraken and like you know in Atlantis when they're first trying to get to Atlantis in the submarine, there's that creature that's hunting them. It's kind of like a weird mix of a classic kraken and that, and I
I
love it.
I so I remember Atlantis from when I was a kid, and that creature was my absolute favorite. It was my favorite
Mhm.
part of the movie. I loved it.
Yeah.
Krakens, the Surikar, I don't care about. Gamazoa are giant. These are all boring. Um, the dragon. Oh, I do want to stop
I
on the dragons for a minute, just because
okay,
you had
but
words.
can I just say first, the Surikar are supposed to be lizard folk, and that hurts me on a personal level. Because the lizard folk, while they tend to be just chaotic beings, they don't deserve to be dragged and told, "Oh yeah, they're basically Surikar," and I'm just looking at this. I don't want to call him ugly, but he's ugly.
Yeah, let me see if I
He's
can.
ugly. That image in the top right of that page. That's this poor
Let
guy.
me make sure that. Let me see if he's an outlier. Oh no, he is. Oh, he's one of the more handsome ones. They went with the
That
good
just makes
one.
me feel worse.
Oh, do not look up Surikar Ban. Actually, no. Look up Surikar Banisher.
No.
It is upsetting. There are four Surikar.
Oh, this poor guy. They did him dirty.
Why he
Like
got
I
squat
understand they
legs
were trying to
like
go for the stats, and that's the whole point of reskinning, but
Surikar grab things they
yeah.
don't want.
Yeah. They I also want to bring up the how did you pronounce it? Gomazoa?
Yeah.
It makes 100% sense that they picked a roper. Yeah, I'm not even that tracks real hard. Do you know what a roper is?
No, but I'm looking it up.
They're
Oh!
disturbing.
Oh, I do not like it.
I
I
know.
do not
It's
care for this.
beautiful. Yeah. I've experienced these guys before. I am not a fan. They're
Is
nasty.
is that thing stuck to the floor?
It can be a stalactite or a stalagmite.
Oh, I do not care for this. I do not.
And and it can move.
Oh, that's not okay. Which,
I
yeah,
know.
that does make sense because Gomazoa, the yeah, the Gomazoa are they are literally creature type jellyfish, and like
Hmm.
Gomazoa, 2 and a blue for a 0/3 jellyfish with defender and flying. Tap. Put Gomazoa and each creature it's blocking on top of their owner's libraries. Then those players shuffle their libraries. So it's taking something away.
Hmm.
Guard
Oh yeah,
Gomazoa.
I
Dormant.
ropers are disturbing. They
Yeah,
are.
I do not. The Gomazoa are kind of cool. Um, yeah, I feel bad for the Surikar now, especially
Did
because
I make you feel bad for them?
makes me feel bad for Styx. I
Yeah,
have
I know.
for those listening, I have a D&D character who is a lizard folk, and man, this is upsetting. Uh, Demons are demons. I wanted to stop briefly on the way to Eldrazi Town with the dragons because you had words. You had feelings.
Zendikar, Zendikar, you did dragons dirty. You did dragons so dirty. So they're saying that for all dragons in Zendikar, you should go with the young red dragon, which on its own is just a phenomenal creature. But then you had to go and say, make its intelligence score 8.
You never actually told me what the young red dragon's regular intelligence score is.
The regular intelligence score of a young red dragon is 14.
Oh,
Uh, for those of you who don't really know how D&D score systems work, standard average is 10, you get a plus 0 to all of your d20 rolls. An 8 gets you minus 1. A 14 gets you plus 3 or
Yeah.
plus 2.
I mean, it was like
Yeah.
I was kind of explaining to you, like, for most planes, dragons are, they're sentient, they're powerful, and they know what they're doing. Zendikar, they're like little more than feral monsters to
Yeah.
like I don't know if young red dragons can actually speak. This doesn't actually have their stat block up, but
Dragons can speak, yes.
uh it would not surprise me if like Zendikar dragons actually can't. But I understand that, hey, if you're gonna but I understand like using the stat blocks of ones I can, but there was also what you were talking about of like people will modify the rules to fit the flavor of whatever it is they're doing.
Yeah.
And so it wouldn't surprise me if somebody was running a Zendikar campaign and included Zendikari dragons and took away their ability to speak.
Yeah. And just to kind of give you an idea of what this creature would be like if all you did was mess with its intelligence. Its strength modifier is plus 6. It doesn't have a great dexterity modifier. Constitution, your ability to withstand poison, the elements, etc., plus 5 to all rolls. If it was smart, it would get plus 2 to all those rolls. And I don't know why this charisma score is like this. But the charisma
Oh, I,
modifier that you get as a young red dragon is plus 4,
oh, real quick, because it even says here in their description, the dragons of Zendikar are not particularly intelligent, especially in comparison to the genius
which
dragon
makes me
planeswalker
sad.
Nicobolus. They are more aware than
That
the
makes
average
me
beast, and perhaps slightly smarter than an ogre. I mean, is if your claim to fame for intelligence is, well, at least I'm not an ogre.
like in in the world of D&D, the main thing with dragons, every dragon has a lair, and if you're in that lair has actions that it can do on behalf of the dragon. And the dragon needs the intelligence in order to set up its lair, but if it doesn't have that intelligence, then it can't have its lair, and that makes me really disappointed.
Yeah, dragons, like, I think there's kind of an unspoken rule in Magic that every set needs a dragon. Uh, and so there's some planes where dragons are just kind of shoehorned in where they really don't necessarily need to be. Like Innistrad
Mm.
has dragons, and I'm not entirely sure why. Ixalan does not have dragons, but they have dinosaurs, and they kind of explain in like through flavor text that a planeswalker Angrath, who was stuck on the plane, uh, saw dinosaurs and was like, "Oh, you have dragons here," and the natives were like, "What the hell are you talking about? Those are dinosaurs." And he goes, "Yeah, dragons." Uh, but yeah, no, I dragons. Yeah, they did kind of get the short end of the stick on Zendikar.
They did, and they don't bring up anything that is associated with dragons having lairs and what that effect is on the environment. They just say, "Oh yeah, you can use dragons."
They live on the around the
Because
mountain of Akum, and that's kind of it.
the the other cool thing about dragons and their lairs is the mere presence of a dragon. It it actually affects the area around it. So, like a red dragon, if a red dragon has its lair in a mountain, that mountain will slowly become a volcano.
Zendikar's
And
already got volcanoes.
but the coolness of a dragon affecting the environment around it.
Yeah, Zendikar doesn't really do that. They were more or less kind of along the lines of, we have the Eldrazi going on. Please ignore our dragons. Uh,
And the dragons have like full personalities of just pure chaos, and I love them.
giant.
Zendikar did them dirty.
So we're coming up on about 40 minutes, and so I mean, we'll skip down here a bit. Giants are giants, ogres, minotaurs, hydras. Like
Yeah, those are all pretty standard.
if you don't know what a minotaur is, then I need you to go back to 7th grade history. Um Trolls, if you don't know what a troll is, I mean Balos are just beasts. If you don't know what an elephant is, um we have scythe cats who that's kind of just like what the species name is, and they're just like leopards and tigers that have blades on their forearms.
Which is strange. I don't understand this obsession with that.
But what I wanted to kind of serve as like the big pinnacle of this is the Eldrazi, because
Oh,
whoo boy, you had thoughts on the Eldrazi, especially the Titans.
so when you first explained the concept of the Eldrazi to me, you use eldritch beings,
Which is what they are. They draw a lot from like the Cthulhu mythos of
which is
like
fair.
yeah, it's because all of them like what you were talking about kind of with the dragons and how they kind of affect things around them. Uh that is what the Eldrazi do. Like for example, we have Kozilek, whose whole thing is he distorts the very fabric of time and space around him.
Yeah.
His original form, Kozilek the Butcher of Truth, doesn't really have anything interesting or flavorful. But Kozilek the Great Distortion can counter spells by discarding cards that have the same mana cost. And so if he has the means to, he can like he's outside of blue, he's outside of any color, he's colorless, so he's outside of any color that would normally have access to counter spells. But because he can distort time and space, he can counter your spells if he has the means to. Emrakul has the ability to just take people's turns. Because we've got Emrakul the Promised End. When you cast Emrakul, gain control of target opponent during that player's next turn. So you get to control what they do. After that turn, that player gets to take an extra turn, so they get a chance to come to their senses. Where
Yeah.
is the other? Why are these not in alphabetical order? Where is the other Emrakul? The one so powerful she's banned in Commander. Um, my computer is loading slowly because I've got so much stuff running.
Maybe you shouldn't have so much stuff running.
uh, but yeah, so anyway, um, yeah, the Eldrazi were kind of influenced by this like Lovecraft's ideas of just these like beings that you cannot physically comprehend, to the point where what people are fighting are not actually in the world. They are just extensions of the Titans, who are still like their bodies are still in the blind eternities, to the point where the way that the Gatewatch killed two of them was they had to use the full magic of the plane of Zendikar to pull them into the world, for Ulamog and Kozilek. And when they did, like, the two of them blotted out the sky. They were so immeasurably huge. And then they lit them on fire.
Yeah.
That is how they killed them. They lit them on
Uh,
fire.
Based on the stat block of the creature they said would be a good replacement for the Eldrazi.
Oh, what creature is
Um,
that? Like a powerful dragon or maybe a kraken? They've got tentacles.
no. Well, a Kraken is one of them. Um, but
Is it the black pudding? Is that who we're talking about?
It is an Eldrazi spawn, but it's not an Eldrazi
What
Titan.
about
No,
Death Salad?
Death Salad. What? No.
Death Slad.
Oh,
Oh,
okay,
this is
okay.
a weird word. Uh, Terraske. What's a
Yeah, no, the Tarask, the very
What?
well known near impossible or is impossible to kill unless you do a beyond level 20 campaign.
Oh,
I I uh
oh
the
no!
second I read that, I started crying because
I was at work and my phone just because because we had been talking about the book. No, we weren't. We weren't talking about the book at that time. I thought we had been because you had texted me like, "Yo, what happened to Herdas to make them the way that they are?" And then I just get in all caps like the Eldrazi are just modified Tarrasques. And I was like, well, yes and no. Only the Titans are.
uh, so when you told me that Eldrazi were eldritch beings, the D&D understanding of eldritch beings are beings with power with the abilities on par of gods, but locked in a domain so that they can only interact through warlocks, more or less. If you look up Eldritch in the monster manual, you will only find creatures that cast spells like Eldritch Blasts. There's no actual Eldritch beings that you fight. So I thought you meant that they're like in the background, but mostly it's their spawn that you're dealing with. But then I read Tarask. Um, for those of you who don't play D&D, the Tarask is the most deadly, the most likely to TPK team party total party kill. This creature is so ridiculously overpowered that most Dungeons and Dragons groups just flat out understand that it is banned unless told otherwise. This creature is so ridiculously overpowered that there is no way that there are memes on Reddit just to the end and back about how hard it is to fight these creatures and how the only way you can make a more difficult creature is to just make stacks upon stacks of Tarrasques. There's no this creature is ridiculous.
Stacks of Tarrasques. Terstacks, as they are called. Um,
Oh my god. So and the fact that they have this list of modifications you can make on top of the Tarrasque is ridiculous. It's
Consider the following additions
ridiculous.
and changes. Eldrazi are immune to psychic damage and the charmed condition.
They are
Eldrazi of
already immune to the charmed condition, and psychic damage is like the only thing they're not immune to.
Eldrazi of Ulamog's brood lineage have no eyes. They are immune to the blinded condition and have blind sight to a range of 30 feet. Yeah, part of
Tarrasques
so if you
Tarrasques have blind sight to 120 feet.
so yeah, if you scroll up a little bit, there's the I believe the creature is the Oracle of Dust, and it looks like it's kind of sitting cross-legged, and it's got like
Mm,
its hand in the river. So this is an Eldrazi of Ulamog swarm. Um, one of their defining features is those arms that split at the elbow.
okay.
And then the other kind of big thing, aside from the fact that they lack skin, is their faces are just bony, expressionless plates.
Yeah.
Kozilek's brood have eyes, but the eyes are all over their bodies. If you scroll back down, there's the Eldrazi mimic, who is that green, like bad dog
Yeah.
who has you can see the orange eyeballs that it has on its like joints.
Yeah.
That one is part of Kozilek's brood. It's got the obsidian plates.
Uh, of this list of creatures for the weaker Eldrazi, these are all pretty solid things to fight. Beholders are pretty wild. Aboleths, Mind Flayers, all pretty difficult but reasonable to deal with. Gorgons are pretty cool. Black puddings are all right. A phase
Delicious.
spider. Phase spiders are cool. I've fought those. Those are fun. Umber Hulks are also pretty cool. The the weakest spawn are all right. Why you gotta drag my mic and it's like that? They're just chilling.
Oh,
But
are
a
those the mushroom
Taras,
people?
they are the mushroom
I
people.
love the
Yes,
mushroom people.
they're pretty cool. I'm still just a Tarask.
The Eldrazi Titans are not to be
Krakens,
messed
as they
with.
are, night. I mean, Krakens aren't meant to be messed with either, and Krakens aren't nearly as bad as the Tarask is. Uh, all D&D monsters have a scale in which we know how difficult they are, and it goes from 0 to 30, or at least for the standard edition ones. Um, the Tarask is a challenge rating 30 creature. The Kraken is only 23.
Is the Tarask the only challenge rating 30?
I think there are other challenge rating 30 monsters. I don't know them off the top of my head,
Is it one of those things
but
that once you hit challenge rating 30, then like there's no point in counting any higher?
pretty much. Uh,
The one thing that I did want to
it's
bring up real quick on their list of possible additions and changes is the very last one. More powerful Eldrazi can consume spawn and use them to fuel their own abilities. The Eldrazi destroys an Eldrazi spawn within 5 feet of it and either regains 10 hit points or regains the use of a single ability as though it had finished a long rest. So, there are Eldrazi spawn and Eldrazi scions in Magic that are. One of them is a 1-1, the other one is an 0-1. I can never remember which is which. But they both do the same thing of you can sacrifice them to generate one colorless mana. And so there are some like there's the Hand of Emrakul that rather than paying it's like 10 or 11 mana cost, you can sacrifice four scions to or spawns one of them to as an alternate cost to cast it. And so there's not actually any real parallel of the Eldrazi like eating the smaller spawns to heal, but there is already this thing of like players in Magic are already going to be familiar with the idea of sacrificing scions and spawns.
yeah. Um, I did look up what other official D&D creatures are challenge rating 30, and the only other one is I don't know if you know the name Tiamat.
Isn't that one of the dragon gods?
That is the dragon god of the colored dragon. It is the patron saint of the colored dragons.
Okay, so that was the chromatic, and then there's
The chromatic,
the metallics. Is that
the
Baphomet?
platinum dragon,
Oh,
Baphomet. Yes,
okay. Oh, Baphomet is the platinum dragon. Okay.
yes.
So yes, I am familiar
Uh,
with Tiamat and Baphomet.
but the Tarask is on the same level as a literal god of the dragons with 5 heads.
Magnificent. I think the thing that makes it even more terrifying is all things considered, the Tarask isn't that big. Like it's big, but like I mean from
Uh,
that picture you sent me of it standing next to people, like
okay, but the
the like
that
the
photo I sent
Eldrazi.
you, I'm pretty sure is fan made.
Okay,
But
because I was gonna say the Eldrazi Titans are the size of mountains.
so I've mentioned to you that there's a sizing system when it comes to D&D creatures. The biggest one being gargantuan, and the only description further than that is 20 by 20 feet or bigger. This creature
Magnificent.
is gargantuan, which means it could be anywhere from 20 by 20 feet to the size of an entire planet.
Ah,
You don't know how big it actually is unless you make it yourself. There is no size limit on it.
that's
And the
terrifying.
fact that it can swallow large creatures whole. And to give you an idea of how big a large creature is, let me look up a large creature. Uh, Large creatures are 10 by 10 feet, or also better known as a hippogriff or an ogre.
Oh,
Just massive creatures.
the
Yeah,
best way to
no.
represent Eldrazi in D&D terms is to adapt a variety of monster statistics to reflect the diversity of these creatures. Almost any
Yeah.
demon or aberration could represent an Eldrazi, and bizarre fungus monsters, oozes, and monstrosities can work as well. And then, yeah, the Eldrazi Titans, Ulamog, Kozilek, and Emrakul are unique beings akin to the Titans of D&D, the Empyrean, Kraken, and Tarask.
Let me
But
just.
yeah, so it looks like there's some fun ways that D&D decided to really up the scale of and put into perspective the power level of these creatures.
Like, just to give you an idea of how freaking ridiculous Tarrasques are, all of their attacks get plus 19 to hit. The only thing stopping a Tarrasque from killing you in one shot when you roll a nat 1 is the rule that says nat 1s mean you miss. Otherwise, it would roll a 20 automatically, and very few player characters have above a 20 on their armor class. It's ridiculous. And this thing has 676 hit points if you go with the average die roll. If you roll them yourself, you're rolling 33 d20s and adding 330 hit points to that.
No.
Yes.
No.
And I actually, as soon as I saw that, I did the math. If you somehow broke the odds and rolled natural 20s on all 33 of those, it would have 6,600 hit points.
Yeah, that sounds like it'd be akin to that sounds like a good representation for the Titans.
And it is immune to fire and poison and immune to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage from non-magical weapons. So literally, unless you have a magical weapon and you're not a fire-focused wizard, which haha, very funny, you're not killing this. You're not. Not without all of your damage just going to
It's
waste.
funny that you bring up the immune to fire, given how the Gatewatch killed Kozilek and Ulamog. They pulled them into the worlds and they lit Zendikar's ley lines on fire and burned them to death.
Technically, if you did that to a Tarask, you would not kill it. It would just be chilling in a nice hot spa. And even its other abilities are ridiculous. If you cast a spell at a Tarask, it will just look at you and go, "Nah, I don't feel like it." It can do that.
Yeah, like Kozilek and his ability to
There's a
counter.
spell in D&D that no matter what, this spell will hit a creature. A Tarask can roll a d6, and on a 6 it can say, "Nah, I don't feel like it." And not only will it say, "Nah, I don't feel like it," it will reflect back to the person who cast it in the first place, which
Ah,
is usually wizards who have no hit points.
yes, the magical Uno reverse card.
Yeah,
The Tarask
exactly.
invoking the power of no you.
And And just to give you an idea of what its actions are like, not even its legendary actions, just its actions. First off, it has multi attack, which means it can attack multiple times. We'll get more into that in a second. But it has a frightful presence, which means it can just be there. And if you look at it right and you fail, I think it's a wisdom saving throw. Yeah, a wisdom saving throw. You are so terrified of it for a full minute that you cannot make any attacks against it. You can't make any attacks at all if you're in its sightline. You can't do anything. So, keeping that in mind, it's multi attack. It can attack you with 5 attacks total. It can attack you with a bite, 2 attacks with claws, 1 attack with a horn, and 1 attack with a tail. And every single one of these attacks deal an average minimum of 24 hit points. And that's like average. It is way more likely to go way higher, and it is ridiculous. And to make things even worse, it can decide if it doesn't want to hit you like 5 million times. It can decide, you know what? I think I want to swallow you and just eat you. It can do that as an
The
action.
most dangerous ability of all, Vor.
Okay, see, but you say that. But every round that you are inside of a Trask, you lose an average of 56 hit points.
Oh no.
Or if your DM decides, you know what, I'm not going to go with the average die roll, 16d6.
Jesus.
That would automatically kill most of my players in D&D, and my highest level 1 is a level 10.
That's rough.
And to make the swallow even better, oh wait, no, that's against the Tarask. Like, literally, the only way that you can kill a Tarask is either from the inside or sacrificing everyone you know in order to just be the last one standing. It would take so long to deal 600 hit points. And that is if you're lucky enough that your DM did not roll the dice himself or herself. Like, this monster is ridiculous.
Yeah, no, I think I like I was saying, I think it does a really good job of really putting into perspective like how powerful the Eldrazi Titans are supposed to be. Uh cuz if they're like, "All right, so you want to fight against the Titans and you're not a pre-mending planeswalker. All right, cool. Here's the unkillable creature that we're going to give you the stat block for. Have at it."
And just to make things even scarier, it can run 40 feet per round.
I don't like that.
For context, most races in D&D run about 30 feet, unless they have special abilities.
Oof. We are coming up. It looks like we have passed an hour. Um,
Whoops.
oh, that's perfectly fine. But I think that is where we'll call it then, or that is where we will call it there. I think what I have learned is that for the most part, D&D does a really cool, like, does a fairly good job of like bringing scale to Magic cards, because like when there's like the Eldrazi Titans, like for example, Ulamog is a 10/10. Um, there's a crab that just got released with, or that got spoiled and is released with uh Zendikar Rising, who's a 0/17. And so like he's an island, he's legendary, he's Carrick's the Raging Isle, but it's just like the idea that this giant crab can face off against an Eldrazi Titan and live. It's like when you're playing like the card game and everything's got to kind of fit within these like more rigid constraints. It's kind of you kind of forget like the individuality of a lot of these things, whereas when you translate them into D&D, a lot of that appears to like come through a lot better. And I
Hmm.
think it's super cool. Like the fact that they decided like, hey, we're gonna base the Titans off the Tarrasque's uh, uh, stats.
Stat block. Yeah.
Uh, really like, because like I've even someone like me who doesn't play a ton of D&D, like I'm familiar with the Tarrasque. Did you know that it comes from French legend? Um,
I
uh,
didn't, but I
yeah,
wonder what happened to the French.
the Tarrasque is French. Uh,
That makes sense with its name, though.
but yeah, so I think it what I've gathered from this is D&D does a really good job of applying scale and personality to a lot of these creatures that kind of lose it when they're just pieces in a card game. Uh and it was really cool to like get that insight. Thank you for ranting to me for the last almost 25 minutes about how ridiculous the Tarrasque is.
Can I end my rant on this little descriptive bit that I found on the Tarask that I didn't see before?
Absolutely.
The legendary Tarask is possibly the most dreaded monster of the material plane. It is widely believed that only one of these creatures exists, though no one can predict where and when it will strike. A scaly biped, the Tarrasque is 50 feet tall and 70 feet long, weighing hundreds of tons. It carries itself like a bird of prey, leaning forward and using its powerful lashing tail for balance. Its cavernous maw yawns wide enough to swallow all but the largest creatures, and so great is its hunger that it can devour the populations of whole towns.
Ah, it's
The
a giant T
destructive
Rex.
The destructive potential of the Tarrasque is so vast that some cultures incorporate the monster into religious doctrine, weaving its sporadic appearance into stories of divine judgment and wrath. Legends tell how the Tarrasque slumbers in its secret lair beneath the earth, remaining in a dormant state for decades or centuries. When it awakens in answer to some inscrutable cosmic call, it rises from the depths to obliterate everything in its path.
So maybe he's just grumpy from being woken up.
My favorite part is this is it's widely believed there's only one.
Okay, but with that charming mental image uh, of just the
Yeah.
hell T Rex, um,
That eats towns whole.
yeah. If you enjoy what we do here, if you want Lee to come back, be sure to leave a comment. Leave us a like. What is your favorite D&D monster? Mine is the black pudding. Uh,
Oh, what's mine? Um, oh, who am I kidding? It's probably a dragon. Dragons are so cool.
dragons are neat. Uh,
Dragons are so
tell
cool.
tell us your favorite Magic the Gathering creature and favorite D&D monster down in the comments below. Also, be sure to subscribe so that you never miss an upload every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I have been Tyler. This has been Lee.
Hello.
Uh, thank you all for listening. Later, y'all.